I wanted to give you a video version of the class lecture on DNA structure and function so you have it to help you study and in case you were absent the day we went over it. So here we go. I started off class talking to you guys about what you noticed about with these fennec foxes. And we are focused on their physical structure or physical features because we're going to connect the idea of structure with function. So we're going to connect the idea with what something looks like or how it's made with how it's able to do its job. So what it looks like or how it's made is the structure, and how it is able to do its job is its function. So we're connecting those two ideas here. So for example, if you look at the fennec fox, which is a North African desert fox, we notice some obvious features right away. So for example, they have really large ears. We can also notice that their eyes are very dark. Their fur is pretty light colored. In fact, it blends very well with the background, probably camouflage. And it's also pretty fluffy. So let's talk about what those structures or those physical features, what those foxes look like, what they have to do with their function and their ability to do their job. So these foxes have very large ears. Let's start with the obvious. These ears are obviously really good for hearing, so they can use them to find their food. They typically eat bugs and small rodents. So they use their ears for hearing, obviously, keeps them alive. But then they're also really good for reducing their temperature or lowering their body temperature. So maintaining that stable body temperature or homeostasis. The blood vessels that are in the ears are going to let out heat so that these foxes don't overheat in the really hot desert sun. So it's a really cool extra feature that their ears are allowing them to. That structure is able to allow this fox's body to do and perform functions that are going to keep it alive. In addition, we can look at the fox's fur. So that one also serves two purposes as well. The color is allowing it to camouflage in its environment or to blend in. And we also see that it's kind of fluffy, and this fluffier fur is going to serve as insulation or a barrier between the external conditions, so its environment, and its internal conditions inside the body, which means that the fox is able to stay warm in the really cool desert nights, and it's going to keep it alive. So that structure serves two purposes, two functions. The color is going to camouflage, and then also we have this insulation or this barrier to keep its body temperature stable again. This is all homeostasis. So what something looks like or what it's made of, its structure is definitely connected to what it's able to do or its function, its ability to do its job. So let's connect this idea to the topic of DNA, which is where we're at in class right now. Let's take a look at this video titled Genes, DNA, and Chromosomes. And let's focus on the idea of genes, DNA, and chromosomes, how they're similar, but also how these ideas are slightly different from each other. They are connected, but not the same idea.
Genes, DNA, and chromosomes are what make you who you are. They are the set of instructions that are given to you by your father and mother. These instructions are in your cells, and all living organisms are composed of cells. There are many different types, like nerve cells and hair cells and skin cells. They all have different shapes and forms, but every cell has the same basic parts. The cell has an outer border called the membrane, which contains a liquid material called cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm is the nucleus, and inside the nucleus are chromosomes. In humans, each cell normally contains 23 pairs of chromosomes, for a total of 46. 22 of these pairs, called autosomes, look the same in both males and females. The 23rd pair, the sex chromosomes, differ between males and females. Females have 2 copies of the X chromosome, while males have one X and one Y chromosome. The chromosomes are really long strings of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA is shaped like a ladder that's been twisted. This shape is called a double helix. The steps of the ladder are made of 4 bases. Adenine is A, thymine is T, guanine is G, and cytosine is C. A stretch of the DNA is called a gene. Your body reads the genes and the letters like a recipe and builds protein. The order of the bases in the DNA, along with the length and sequence of the gene, determines the size and shape of the protein it builds. The size and shape of the protein determine the function it will have in your body. Proteins make up cells, cells make up tissue, and tissue makes up organs, like your eyes and your skin. So the genes determine what you are, a cow, an apple, or a human, and what you will look like, the color of your hair, your skin, your eyes, and so on.
So let's talk about DNA. When we take a look at DNA, which is on the right-hand side, we notice that DNA is this kind of funny shape, and we call that a double helix. Double helix is a shape just like any other, like a circle or a square, except for it's not one that we learn in school, but it is actually a shape, and to the average person, we would say it looks like a twisted ladder or a spiral staircase. DNA's pieces, or we call those the monomers, aka means also known as. The monomers are called nucleotides. And these nucleotides, or these small pieces of DNA, consist of or contain 3 parts. A phosphate, sometimes called a phosphate group, a sugar, in DNA's case, the sugar is called deoxyribose, and a base. And the bases are A, T, C, or G, adenine, thymine, guanine, or cytosine. DNA has 4 bases. They're right there in the center of the page. Again, they are adenine, or A, thymine, or T, guanine, or G, cytosine, or C. And you don't need to memorize how to spell them, but you should be able to recognize them if they're written or on a screen. And these nitrogen bases, if we're talking about it being a spiral staircase or a ladder, those are going to be located in the center of the DNA structure, or the double helix structure. They're where you're going to be putting your feet. So where you will be stepping is where those bases are going to be at. Remember, those are a part of the nucleotide. The nitrogen bases are one part of the nucleotide. The other 2 parts of a nucleotide which make up DNA is the backbone. And it's the gray section of DNA that you see to the right. The backbone, another way to think of that is it's the thing that's going to hold up the structure. So if we took the sides of a ladder away, the ladder's going to fall apart. The sides of this double helix is the backbone, and it's made up of sugar and phosphate and sugar and phosphate, sugar and phosphate. So every other one, it's going to alternate. It's going to be a sugar and then a phosphate, and it keeps going back and forth. DNA base pairing rules are made by Chargaff. So you can see in the picture we have T and C and A and G. I'm looking at the top part. And you can see they're kind of shaped like puzzle pieces, which makes it easier to think about. And A and T fit together very nice and neatly, and C and G fit together. The bottom picture shows you that even if they wanted to, the shapes, those structures, do not allow those 2 different bases to fit. T and G will never go together, and A and C will never go together. The rule is that A and T are going to go together, and C and G are always going to go together in DNA. There is not another option. Chargaff figured this out by counting the bases in DNA. Let's take a look at another video.
Stated Clearly presents, what is DNA and how does it work? DNA, also known as deoxyribonucleic acid, is a molecule. It's a bunch of atoms stuck together. In the case of DNA, these atoms combine to form the shape of a long, spiraling ladder, sort of like this one here. If you ever studied biology or saw the movie Jurassic Park, you probably heard that DNA acts as a blueprint or a recipe for a living thing. But how? How on earth can a mere molecule act as a blueprint for something as complex and wonderful as a tree, a dog, or a dinosaur? To help answer that question, let's first take a quick look at amino acids. Amino acids are tiny little chemicals inside our bodies that are so important, they're often referred to as the building blocks of life. There's about 20 different kinds, each with their own unique shape. The neat thing about them is they can be attached to each other kind of like Legos to produce an endless variety of larger particles known as proteins. Amino acids make up proteins. Proteins, along with other chemicals, combine to form living cells. Cells make up tissues. Tissues make up organs. And organs, when they're all put together and functioning, of course, combine to form living creatures like you and me. These proteins that make up our bodies, and keep in mind there's millions of different kinds of proteins, they each have to be formed in the perfect shape in order to function. If they're the wrong shape, they usually won't work. That's where DNA comes in.
When we talk about DNA function, we're really always talking about how DNA makes proteins. So we'll be going through that process next week. But I do want you to know that DNA structure will affect the protein. So if we change anything small about a DNA's structure, it's going to affect a protein. It might affect the shape of the protein, and that will affect what a protein is able to do. Let's take a look at one more video.
What do you think of when you think of the word mutation? Do you think about X-Men and some really awesome ability? Or the Ninja Turtles? We loved the Ninja Turtles when we were little. We might be showing our age a little bit. But mutations really are not that glamorous. Most people understand that a mutation is some kind of change. It is a change of genetic material, and more specifically, a nucleic acid. RNA and DNA, they're both types of nucleic acids. So how does a change happen? Remember that in DNA, the base adenine A goes with the base thymine T, and the base cytosine C goes with the base guanine G. And that's all good, but what happens if the wrong base matches up? Many things can cause an error like that. There can be external factors, like chemicals and radiation. Internal things too, like something goes wrong during DNA replication. How about some real-life examples now of mutations? Remember, we said that a lot of times mutations can have a neutral effect. Not all of your DNA codes for a direct protein. And other genes in your body can even influence whether those genes are going to be turned on or turned off. Let's talk about sickle cell anemia. First, a little background. Hemoglobin is a protein in your red blood cells that helps you carry oxygen. Well, in the disorder sickle cell anemia, the gene that codes for hemoglobin is mutated. And if you inherit 2 copies of this mutated gene, one from each parent, you can have this disorder. And the disorder makes it very difficult for your red blood cells to carry oxygen, because the shape of the red blood cell, it's affected from this mutated hemoglobin protein. And this can lead to anemia and other problems.